Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to one of our breakout sessions within the Red Cedar Watershed Conference. This is Mr. Paul Verdon, and his title is Making Changes in the Watershed, One Student at a Time. If you're here by mistake, don't leave, because this is the best one. You need to stay on. My name is Randy Eide. I am the Public Works Director for the City of Menomonie, and I am a member of the Red Cedar Conference Planning Team. And it is truly my honor to moderate and introduce Paul. But before I get there, a couple of housekeeping rules. Or a couple of housekeeping notes. The session is going to go from 10:30 to 11:15. We anticipate Paul will get done a little earlier, and then we'll try to answer some questions. Megan Hines is helping me. She's our environmental program coordinator for the city. She'll help with some of the questions at the end. That's up on the tab on the right side of your screen. You can see the questions come in. If you have a question, please enter it. If you want to vote for one, you can hit that tab on the right side of the question, and we'll bring that one to the top, and Megan will ask those questions of Paul. So again, my honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Paul Verdon. I could read your bio. I could read his bio and then walk through all the numbers. It'll talk about 30 years with the Menomonie School District, K through 12 environmental educator, 15 years working community service. But let me just share a personal note. Paul is an engaged teacher. He cares about this community, the environment, and even more so for his students. And through the years that I've been here, he has been teaching the students life lessons about caring for their environment and being engaged citizens in their community. And that's gone on for almost generations, Paul. I think he's getting there, but it's gone on for a long time. And as the Public Works Director, he keeps me on my toes. And I'd love to have 15 more, maybe 20 more, Paul. So maybe that's enough. But he keeps me on my toes in what we're doing in the city. And it is my honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Paul Verdon.
Wow, thank you very much, Randy. I have been at Menomonie quite a long time, and I have every class that I teach, I've got children that I taught as 8th graders when they were 14 years old. This is my 31st year at Menomonie, wonderful school district. Today I want to explain to you, share with you what we do in Menomonie as far as teaching about watersheds, and one creek in particular, Jarrett Creek in Menomonie. And over the past 12 years, I think we have made some positive changes, one student, one family at a time. So I have Grace Hasse, a student of a high school student here with us today. Grace is an 11th grader. She'll be sharing at some point today. Grace, can you hear me? Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi, Grace. So they said, Grace, that your camera will come on when you talk, okay? And it looks like you found a quiet place at school. Great. And Grace is a junior at Menomonie High School, and fantastic science student, science Olympiad member, and all around great person. And then we have possibly another student joining as well, Elizabeth Coffin, a 12th grader, and they're going to talk briefly about the Jarrett Creek project and attending the Red Cedar Watershed Conference and how it may have affected their education. So here we go. Here's my slide set. Jarrett Creek Science Investigation, Menomonie Middle School, 8th grade science. 12 years ago, we decided that we wanted to involve our students in a real, meaningful scientific investigation. We wanted it to be something to do with the environment, and water quality in Menomonie, of course, is a major issue, and that sort of that guided us. The algae bloom issue guided us towards choosing stream monitoring as our scientific investigation. This is Jarrett Creek. This is the Jarrett Creek watershed. It is on the east side of Menomonie. It is a small watershed, but it is a really diverse watershed. My school is located on the west side of the watershed, and this watershed has a little of everything. It's got quite a bit of agricultural land, as you can see. It's got city, it's got tech park, several different corporations. It has residential areas, and it was a nice small tributary that our students could monitor. So our question is, our scientific question, does Jarrett Creek carry nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen and other pollutants to the Red Cedar River and Lake Menomonie, because it empties directly into Lake Menomonie? This is our scientific question. The students and staff, we've been monitoring the creek for the past 12 years. We measure phosphorus, ammonia, chlorine, DO, turbidity, pH. We also measure stream flow, and we conduct an annual Biotic Index rating. The students are learning about the scientific process by conducting a real life scientific investigation. Our other goal is to develop an understanding of the watershed. How do watersheds work? Watershed dynamics, sources of pollution, impact of algae blooms on local environments, and strategies to reduce water pollution. We think that by involving all students in 8th grade each year, we impact all students and hopefully their families in the entire school district as the kids come through 8th grade. By better understanding the issues related to water pollution, students will be able to make informed decisions regarding water quality throughout their lives. Clean water is really our ultimate goal. But, you know, we want the kids to learn how to do science. What is science? And so we use this Jarrett Creek investigation to teach them about science. But in the back of our minds, we're hoping to make changes in the watershed. We start out with building some base knowledge. How do watersheds work? We look at various watersheds. We study the Red Cedar watershed. We look at all the sub-watersheds in it. We have some of the kids trace out the creeks that they like to go fish or where they might go vacation. We look at the towns that are upriver. We learn about things that are happening in the watershed. As I said before, Jarrett Creek is very diverse. 80% agriculture. You can see quite a bit of grassland, hay, set aside, CRP. You can see quite a bit of woodland. Urban areas, we have a hospital, we have a county rec park, we have residents, we have schools. The white arrow shows where the middle school is at. My school that I teach at, just to the north of that is Oak Lawn Elementary. And this is the Dunn County Rec Park. This is the hospital complex. And Jarrett Creek has 3 basic main tributaries, with the West Branch right behind our school, a wetland area behind our school. The Middle Branch is sort of the largest and carries the most water. This is Anderson Corporation. We have a sand mine. This is Covia sand plant right here. 3M is just outside the watershed. The students learn about non-point source pollution. What is it? How does it affect the watershed? We learn about phosphorus and nitrogen, and how they cause algae blooms in our local lakes. When does it happen? What's physically happening? We talk about the effect that the algae blooms have on our community. We look at real examples of flood events that have occurred over the years here in Menomonie. This picture is 18 Mile Creek in Colfax, a big tributary just above Lake Tainter. And it has some very high phosphorus levels. And during heavy rainstorms, as you can see in this picture, there's lots of suspended sediment, lots of nutrients coming down river. There's lots of sand mines up in the upper 18 Mile Creek watershed. And this picture on the left, we captured a sample of this. This was a September rainfall 4 years ago. There we had a 4-inch rain on a school day. And we captured a sample of this. We talk about this ditch that runs through this cornfield is less than a half mile from the river, going right towards the Red Cedar River. So we talk about these real events and how the non-point nutrients are getting to the river. We capture these samples over the years. Here's the sample on the right that came from a February snowmelt. I don't remember if it was this day exactly, but this is Jarrett Creek. This is Jarrett Creek during a melt event. Carries a fair amount of water when it's raining or during a melt event. And as you can see, it is very turbid at times. That has a 3 centimeter clarity reading in a turbidity tube. So after preparing the kids in the classroom for about a week, learning about the topic, learning about non-point source pollution, learning about watersheds, then we start preparing them for their field trip to the creek to collect our data every September. So we use Water Action Volunteers protocols and their training videos. They're fantastic. We purchased equipment. We spend a few days on each topic. We spend a few days on chemical analysis, how to conduct a chemical test, what they indicate, where they come from. We spend a couple of days learning about Biotic Index, how to measure it. We watch the very informative videos online. We learn about streamflow, how to measure streamflow. So this is Jarrett Creek, and you can see that the water in this image, the Jarrett Creek is crystal clear at times. This is Site 1, which is just upriver of the mouth where it empties into Lake Menomonie. Maybe 300 yards upstream. And this part of the stream flows clear and steady all year. This is spring fed. The water's clear and cold. But because this creek flows through a city and because there's lots of urban landscapes, this creek is very, very sensitive to rainfall. It fluctuates very quickly with increased rain for melt events. We'll back up a slide. Here's a hardy crew of 8th graders that are at the creek. This is, they're probably near the end of their study. That's why they're all in the water, making the water more turbid. So like we said, we do Biotic Index. This is probably one of the more important things that we do because we do go to the stream every September. And of course, during the school year, we also collect rainfall events and we collect melting events, and we keep those, we keep that information on file as well. But we keep going back to the stream every September and conducting some baseline studies and doing our Biotic Index rating. So as I said before, we use the Water Action Volunteers protocols, and we use their data sheets. And you can see here on the right, ice cube tray that is filled with invertebrates, dragonfly, amphipods. This is a caddis. We've discovered caddis in the last few years. These students in this picture are, they're about a quarter-mile upstream on one of the 3 tributaries. So we study all 3 tributaries. We measure stream flow. Each group of students, we break a classroom, a normal classroom, into 5 or 6 groups. And each group of students selects a 20-foot section of stream to measure. And in that 20-foot section, they do their biotic, they do their stream flow, they do their chemical test. Of course, the chemical test is done as soon as we get to the stream. So here's a familiar face as an 8th grader. That's Grace. And these kids are measuring stream flow. So we do stream flow to just sort of keep track and also to help calculate how much pollutant is getting to the lake. We'll look at our phosphorus tests, and then we'll do the math and determine how many pounds of phosphorus gets to the lake in a day, in a month, in a year. And Jarrett Creek can carry a lot of phosphorus. We do phosphorus, ammonia, and chlorine using Hasse chemical test kits, like these boys are doing. And we use our vernier probes to do temperature, dissolved oxygen, and pH. The vernier probes we purchased with a grant. I'll talk more about the grant in a little bit. And then also 3M. Some 3M money. We were able to purchase 15 vernier probes, and we used state DNR money to purchase the different probes that went with the vernier. And then every year we have to update our chemicals, our reagents in the Hasse test kits. We measure turbidity or clarity. Most of the time we just keep it in centimeters of clarity. So this is some typical data. This is what we found at Site 1, which is near the mouth this fall. This is quite typical. Now keep in mind, these are 8th grade students doing this science. So they're 13 and 14 years old. So this is not PhD science work. This is kids learning how to do science, but they practice. And I'm with this group. I'm sharing Site 1 data today because I've been with this group at this location, sort of overseeing. I have 5, 6 groups that go out, and I have my teachers on my team. My math teacher goes with the group. My language arts teacher takes a group. My social studies teacher takes a group. Guidance counselor takes a group. And when we come back to school, we average our data. But anyway, this is Site 1 this fall. Stream flow, the stream was running low and clear, 120 centimeters of clarity all the way to the top of the turbidity tube. We have some good biotic index scores recently. It's very interesting to watch this. It was not always that way, but it is improving. pH, oxygen seemed a little bit low this year for as cold as the water was. We use, like I said, the vernier probes, and then we also use another DO meter that we have. Chlorine, we had a trace of chlorine. We had a fair amount of phosphorus this fall in our Hasse kit, and this is typical. And even though the water is crystal clear, we usually get at the mouth at this location, we register phosphorus. Now this is just the color. This is the Hasse chemical test kit, the low range phosphorus, and so you're turning the dial, looking at the color on the color dial. And so it's not super detailed, but we are seeing phosphorus almost every time, even with crystal clear water. So it's dissolved, it's in the groundwater. Ammonia, we had a trace of ammonia, just a slight color change on the kit for ammonia and chlorine. And then this is what our cumulative data would look like. So this fall, we tested 3 sites. Because of COVID, things were a little bit different this year. We did have our fall field trip. We did have it with masks on. Of course, this is a great way to get kids out in the fresh air and 6 feet apart. And we took one group to Lake Menomonie. We had some students with some special needs that couldn't get down to the creek. So occasionally we'll do a group right at Lakeside Park or at Point Comfort City Park. And so you can see the stream flow at 3 sites. Branch 4, which is the south branch, has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. 3 years ago, the city put in a large retention pond that captures water from a good section of the Jarrett Creek watershed. And so we have seen this branch drop in flow, except of course during a melt event or rain event. Stream flow at site 3, that is 2 tributaries together. And then at the mouth, site 1, all 3 tributaries are together. And we've got some pretty good biotic index scores there. This is at the high end of fair or middle fair. This is at the low end of good. 2.6 is the beginning of a good rating. We had a little high pH at midstream and slightly acidic pH at site 4. That's sort of typical for that site. Water was not quite as clear. Well, we registered, the kids did a biotic index reading at the lake off the docks. So that may not be super accurate. Oxygen readings, chlorine, phosphorus, ammonia, temperature, good and cold. After the field trip, the students write up a lab report. They look at the data. They look at their data from this year and from previous years. We post all of the data for them to analyze. And the students then take several days to write up a formal lab report. What is their conclusion? What's their scientific claim? Based on evidence and scientific reasoning. That's really the heart of science. Claim, scientific claim, backed up by, supported by evidence and reasoning. So the final step to the scientific process is to share data with others. And so for the past 9 years, our students have shared their data at the Red Cedar Watershed Conference. We take a couple of students from each of the 10 science classes, and these kids create this is last year's display board. The students created this. And the kids go to the conference, and a few of them at a time display. We are an exhibitor usually at the conference. And so they will, they'll stand at their exhibit and talk to people and share information. They really enjoy it. Then the rest of the kids they all go to the sessions as well. And then afterwards, when back at school, they present to their classmates. As a group, they put together a slideshow and they present their data to their classmates. This is the group we took a couple of years ago. A happy bunch of kids. Here's our crew last year and their display boards. Here they are in the exhibit hall, answering questions. Thank you all, adults, those of you that have been to the conference and spent time at the kids' table. They really appreciate it. And here's the whole crew that I took. This was the last day of school before COVID struck. No masks. Afterwards, after writing their lab report, of course, we spend quite a bit of time. This study takes all of September. The Jarrett Creek investigation takes all of September. and part of October. So then we talked about, how do you solve the problem? How do we restore water quality? How do we solve this pollution problem? And we do use restoring water quality in the Red Cedar Watershed. The kids read this. I'm starting to use this document as well. The last few years, we watch this video and discuss it. It's Into the Outdoors, Water Pollutions and Solutions. And of course, this is featured on Lake Tainter and talks with Dick Lamers. And it's a great 30-minute video. I'd recommend it to any teachers that are learning about water quality. We use Rain to Rivers. We use the website. We use their video on stormwater runoff. It's really good. I would recommend it. We talk about things that you can do, and really it comes down to infiltration, slowing the water down on your property, getting it to soak in, not run off. And so we challenge the students then, what can we do? Some of our Earth Day projects are based on infiltration and rain gardens. We had several students last year that installed rain gardens. So everybody wants to know, what have we found? How much time do we have left here?
Paul, you got about 20 minutes left.
Okay, thanks. So what have we found? Base flow. The creek, the lower ends of the creek have really good base flow, spring flow. Even during dry periods, the lower sections of the stream maintain a good, consistent base flow. Jarrett Creek fluctuates quickly, however, with rainfall and melting events because of the urban suburban landscapes. This past summer, a year ago, Menomonie had a very heavy summer rain. I believe it was 5 to 6 inches. And many of the landowners talked to us about significant erosion. We have found moderate levels of phosphorus to be consistently be present in the lower sections of the stream in a dissolved state. Of course, we find it also during turbid events. Higher flow, we usually find higher turbidity, and we usually find higher phosphorus, just what you would think. We have found our highest ammonia readings during spring rain events. We find a little bit of chlorine, but we don't do a lot of spring measuring. But during some of the melting events we've captured have some significant chlorine. We've noticed higher biotic index scores the past 3 to 4 years, including caddisfly in the lower sections of the stream, which was not there 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. We've also noticed in our readings lower phosphorus the past few years. So just a couple of quick graphs here. This is Biotic Index at Site 1 over the past several years. And this is real data. We have seen it climb to a good rating. In 2019, we had the highest of all at 2.85, well up into the good category with caddisfly and lots of aquatic invertebrates. And this year, at all locations, it did drop off. And I'm questioning the heavy rainfall event that occurred this summer. But this is a good trend. Phosphorus levels at Site 1 again over the last 4 years anyway. And we've seen a pretty consistent, significant drop in phosphorus levels at Site 1. This year's data is definitely higher, and I double checked it myself. We have discovered that late winter melting events carry the greatest amount of pollutants. Here's a couple of ones that I picked out. Here's a February 2014 melting event, and I believe it is this one right here. 3 centimeters of clarity. So this was captured on the middle branch. This was captured on the middle branch of the stream after the western branch has already joined it. Phosphorus levels are pretty high, trace of chlorine, high phosphorus, very high. This is the highest phosphorus we've ever gotten. This was that same year. This was a March 10th melting event. I have this sample at school as well. That's the highest reading we've had, and that was checked multiple times. Very high chlorine, very high ammonia. Here's another one from 2018. This is not the site. This is just a picture farther upstream on the Blacktop Road, Lookout Road, that might be. And this was day 2 of a melting event. Stream was dirty, but low to moderate flow, high phosphorus, fairly high ammonia. We have applied for 2 grants through the Wisconsin DNR, citizen-based monitoring grants. We received our first grant in 2009, it was $5,000. And this was, we shared this money with Colfax and Stout and the Lake Association. And with this money, we bought our original equipment, sampling nets, some hot kits. And then we wrote our second grant. Mr. Brian Evans from Menomonie Middle School, science teacher, wrote this grant. We were given $5,000 for more equipment and more of our digital equipment. So we could not be doing this stream study without this grant money and the equipment. Okay, so the title of the presentation is Making Change in the Watershed, One Student at a Time. So I put together a survey and we sent it out to all of our high school science teachers. I was hoping to get hundreds of responses. I was able to get 90. So I have 90 students that responded to these questions. And the questions are like this one. Did the Jarrett Creek investigation help you better understand the scientific process? And you can see that the majority said, yes, I learned a lot. 31% said, yes, I learned a little of the scientific process. I was hoping for a little bit higher. And this one, did the Jarrett Creek investigation help you better understand water pollution, algae bloom? This is some good news. Yes, 68% said, yes, I learned a lot about water pollution, algae bloom. 19% said they learned a little bit. Students can remember what the primary nutrients are, phosphorus and nitrogen. Here's the big one. Did the Jarrett Creek investigation cause you or your family to change how you manage runoff from your property? So we had 19% that said yes. It caused a change in how their family manages runoff. 25% said maybe it did. We have 29% of our students that said yes, that their family has implemented runoff reduction or pollution reduction strategies at their home. Did the Jarrett Creek investigation have an impact on the classes you've chosen in high school or possible career path? 24% said yes. Did attending the Red Cedar Watershed, did you attend? So we had 33% of the kids that responded that they did attend the conference as an 8th grader. Did the conference have a lasting impact on you? So out of the 33% that did attend, 17% said yes, this had a lasting impact on me and my post-high school plans or possible career choice. Did it have a positive impact on your education, attending the conference? Yes, 30% of them said yes. Almost all the kids that went said yes, this was a positive impact on my education. So I have Grace here today and possibly Elizabeth. And let me pull up my screen again. Yes, Elizabeth is here too. So Elizabeth and Grace, would you be willing to make a few comments, your thoughts on Jarrett Creek? Actually, first, could you just introduce yourself and tell the audience just a little bit about you? Elizabeth, it looks like you stayed home today. Elizabeth, let's start with you. Elizabeth is our 12th grader. And you unmute. There you go. Tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Well, hi, my name's Elizabeth Coffin, and I am like scarily a senior at Menomonie High School. Yeah, basically a little bit about myself is that I've been on the Science Olympiad team for 3 years, but due to COVID and everything, I didn't participate this year, but I still have been studying science but because of Jarrett Creek is kind of why I enjoy science. I'm also in the musicals and yeah, that's basically what I do.
Great. So Elizabeth, how did attending the conference, how did the Jarrett Creek investigation or attending the conference affect you, your family? You told me earlier that it did cause some changes. Could you explain that to the audience?
So after doing the Jarrett Creek lab and investigation and everything, I went home and I was like looking at my family's lawn care and like how my dad takes care of our lawn, and I'm like, wow, he really uses a lot of chemicals on our lawn, and I realized that that's not beneficial for the environment really. So after a lot of convincing and trying to be like, hey, there's other options, we don't need to do this. He finally agreed to not do fertilizer and chemicals and everything on our lawn, and our lawn still looks great. So that was a big change that my family made to help not have runoff. And then we also have been like using water from rain. We collect rainwater to water our plants, so we're not using the well water and all that sort of stuff, and trying to basically be more efficient with the things that we're using and not harming the environment.
Awesome. And you told me that you're planning to go to the university or Concordia, possibly science, but also possibly the arts and music.
Yes.
And do you remember vividly attending the Watershed conference and its impact on you?
Yes, a big thing for me is that at that age, science to me was kind of like you can either go for chemistry or physics. I didn't really know that much about life science, and having the Jarrett Creek lab and that whole conference kind of gave me a chance to do hands-on activity and be able to share my ideas with these grown-up people who have done things with their lives. And it really just showed me that, oh, hey, being interested in life science is okay. And this is actually beneficial for our community, this research that I did as a tiny 8th grader. And I completely forgot about that because until Mr. Verdon emailed me, I was like, wow, Jarrett Creek really was a time in my life where I enjoyed science a lot. And so yeah, it kind of sparked my interest in science again by that.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. Grace, sorry you have to follow that. Grace Hasse, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as Mr. Verdon introduced me, I'm Grace Hasse, and I am a junior at Menomonie High School. I'm very into the sciences, and I am currently a varsity member of the Science Olympiad team. And I enjoy like theater, going outdoors, and like a lot of camping is what my family likes to do.
And tell us your thoughts of the investigation, Jarrett Creek, the Watershed Conference, how it may have affected your life.
In taking part of the Jarrett Creek investigation, I realized that everyone is affected by like our water. It's something that we really need, and everyone kind of needs to do their part to like keep our water sources clean. And that really like hit home to me when I like attended the various conferences. I attended a year like after too, because I really enjoyed it and wanted to learn more. And by attending it, it made me more mindful of my actions. So I had mentioned prior that we do a lot of camping in my family, and I like learned not to dump things by the water drain and like collect water to wash our dishes with, and don't wash it directly, obviously, into the water if we're doing camping by a water source. And that was a big thing that brought on from the Watershed Conference. And then the information that I learned also helped me in Science Olympiad because I was in the event called Water Quality specifically. And because of the information I gathered, I was able to add to my notes and get the principles more understood, and I could relate the concepts more to the test questions. And that helped me move up to the varsity team and do well in that event. And that was an event where we had to do basically what we did during the investigation. So Mr. Verdon already talked about like Biotic Index and other knowing about the different treatments and tests that we take. That was a huge part of about the event overall. And so that doing it before helped me like understand the questions better. And it really made me a better Science Olympiad person. And it influenced my major that I'm going to major in biology. And it influenced me like I can actually maybe do this as a career, like go out and do research like that. Because my goal eventually is to become a research entomologist. And so that could either be with water or on land. I haven't really decided yet, but it influenced me to like expand my options. Like not only can I do land stuff, I can also do like the little creatures that live in the water too. And that really interested me a lot.
Awesome. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Elizabeth. Can you stay on here? We've got a few minutes left. Thank you so much for joining us. And Randy and Megan, do we have any questions that we need to get to?
Paul, I'm not seeing any questions. And Megan, is that true? No questions right now?
Yeah, I haven't seen any questions. So if anyone has questions, make sure you're putting them in the Q&A tab on the far right-hand side. If you have questions for Paul, Grace, or Elizabeth.
But I'd like to thank, we'll see if some questions come up in a little bit. I want to thank Paul and Grace and Elizabeth for Paul, especially for sharing all that data and the research going on with Jarrett Creek and the city of Menomonie. And Grace and Elizabeth, wow, those testimonies you just gave, you know, you said the adults impacted you when you were at the conference. I'm predicting you just impacted hundreds of adults by what you said. And just sharing your thoughts and even students that are listening too. So that is awesome. And it kind of makes it worthwhile for all of us putting on the Red Cedar Watershed Conference to hear, you know, that it does impact people and that you remember it and going forward with that. So those are awesome things. I do, you know, I get a lot of calls from Paul once in a while. He says, how come the salt's gone up in these streams? And what's going on, Randy? We see the salt spreader out there. And I've told the operators, I said, hey, you guys, we need to tone this down. Now we're doing anti-icing where we put brine in and we just put a little bit of brine on the street. So we use less salt. We pre-wet the salt so it doesn't bounce around the street so much. But the real thing I've told the operators, the truck drivers, is we've got middle school students that are out there figuring this out before we do, and we need to reduce that salt content and just stop spreading so much salt. And they understand that. They live in the community too. So it all kind of comes around in a cycle, and I really do appreciate what you're doing. And again, Paul, thanks for the presentation. And again, is there any questions, Megan?
Nope, I'm not seeing any questions.
Great. Paul, any last thoughts, Grace or Elizabeth?
I'll add a couple of things here. So I've been able to take students to the conference for 9 years. And, you know, the first year we took 4 kids. Then I think after a few years we took 8 and it slowly grew. And now we're taking 20 kids. Every student that we've ever taken to the conference has just loved it. Loved it. I had students last year that took 5 pages of notes. It's like, you guys are not being graded on this. They didn't care. They just loved being there. Loved what they were hearing. It's a neat thing that our community has going, and I hope it continues for a long time.
Well, thanks, Paul. Thanks again. And for everybody listening, we'll be ending this session here now. Thanks for your time. If you do have any questions, you can still post them and we'll try to get the answers to you. Coming up at 11:30 is our next keynote speaker, Mr. Adam Reimer. And Adam will be talking about regenerative agriculture. So please tune in for that and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.